Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, mgrahamsews. This tutorial is for this lovely bag called the Brevity Bag, and it's by Just An E Handmade. This bag has a few options for attaching your strap, and it's just a really fun and quick sew. Before we discuss the features, there's just a few things I wanted to mention. First, this tutorial is filmed like a sew-along. That means there's no parts that are sped up, no parts that are cut out. You see me do everything. So if there's anything that you don't want to see, you can just fast forward through it or change the speed in YouTube so it goes a lot faster. The other thing to note is I don't give any measurements. I show no rulers, no cutting mats, nothing like that in the tutorial, and that's for the protection of the designer, but also because I film during testing, so oftentimes things can change, and this way, if something does change, my tutorial is not affected. So you will need to have the pattern either open, printed beside you, or on a device, or on the device that you're watching this on. And that way there you can follow along and know what the measurements are for everything. So let's discuss some of the features of this bag. As I mentioned, there's different options for attaching your strap. So there's a hardware here. It's a specialty hardware that goes on the side, a D connector hardware. You can use grommets like I did, or attach it with your strap connectors like you see in a typical bag where they have the strap connectors that come off the sides here. So I decided to do the grommets. I really like how it looks, and I like how it pinches those sides in. I just love how it looks. And as you'll see, there is that magnetic snap. But I like how it looks. Now it's attached with gate rings, but if you don't have gate rings, not to worry, because you can still attach it with the swivel hook. I'll show you. So you just take the gate ring off, and the swivel hook can still attach to the grommet. Oh, there we go. The swivel hook can still attach to the grommet, and you can still use the bag without the gate rings. The gate rings just add a little bit more bling to the bag, and it makes it a little bit easier to attach as well. So it just snaps on and off. So that is how it attaches. And you have two different strap options too. So you can make it a shoulder strap or this crossbody strap. Now I did the crossbody strap because, as you'll notice, if you tighten it as tight as it can go, it still can be worn as a shoulder bag, and then you have the option for changing it to be a crossbody bag. So if you get tired of carrying it on your shoulder, you can just carry it crossbody. It's nice to have that option because we never know who we're making the bags for. Say we sell at craft markets, if they like shoulder bags or crossbody bags, so it's just nice to have that option. So as I was mentioning, the bag does close with a magnetic snap, but it's a nice big bag. There's lots of room inside the bag. There's no pockets or anything, which makes this a really quick sew. So you're just constructing the exterior, constructing the lining, adding your hardware, and you're done. You could definitely add pockets inside if you want pockets inside. You could even do something on the outside, so maybe do a panel here, something that you want to be featured on the front of your bag. So you'll have to read through the pattern for sure first and find out what the measurements are so you know where to place everything. But it's a really fun sew and it's really quick, so it'll be great for making for markets, or if you need a last minute gift, this is great. It'll whip together in no time. So again, this is the Brevity Bag, and it's by Just An E Handmade, and I'm going to walk you through all the steps of making this bag, so let's get started. The very first thing you'll want to do is read through the entire pattern. This is very important because oftentimes designers give different information regarding different materials you're using, or maybe different interfacing. So sometimes, depending on the materials, they may need to be cut differently, and interfacing may be different depending on the materials you're using. So it's important to make note of this before you begin cutting out your materials. Also, it's important because it familiarizes you with the construction of the bag, so you know what you're going to be doing as you get through the pattern. It's very important with this pattern because there's different options for making the strap, which requires different hardware. So for this tutorial, I am going to be doing the strap that is a crossbody strap, and it requires grommets and gate rings. I'll still be attaching swivel hooks and a slider, so I will show you how to do that. I'm also going to walk you through how to attach the strap connectors at the top of the bag, and I'll kind of walk you through how to attach that specialty hardware as well. So there's a couple of different options for the strap. So you'll want to read the pattern and see which one you prefer to do and which hardware you prefer to add, because there's lots of options for this bag. So in this baggie is all my hardware that I need for this pattern, so I've already gone ahead and gathered all that. I don't need these strap connectors, but like I said, I wanted to show you how to do them, so I did cut them so I could walk you through. And I'm making the crossbody strap, so I've cut my strap to length. You can also use a chain for this pattern as well. If you want to just have something that's a really quick make, you can just put the chain on it. Now I've also gone ahead and cut out all my pattern pieces. I'm using a soft vinyl, which is really scrunchable, so you can see that it scrunches up really nicely. It's great for domestic machines, and it's just a really beautiful material to sew with. It's sort of like a quilting cotton that's interfaced, so I really like it. I've marked the bottom centers of my bottom panels just because I know when we get to that step I'm going to need to do it. I can't mark the centers of these yet because these are going to be constructed together, so I have to leave them unmarked. However, for my strap, I did mark the center down the entire length of the strap, but I'm going to show you how to do that all, including the different types of straps that you can attach. I will walk you through them. So let's get started on making our bag, and the first thing we're going to do is construct our strap. Now, as I mentioned, I'm making a crossbody strap, so I've already marked a line down the entire length of the strap in the center. Now what you need to do is fold this. Now, if you're using a quilting cotton, you can take this to your iron, fold it directly in half, press it all the way along the length, open that back up, and fold both these long edges in to meet that center crease and press it. And you'll do that all the way down. Now, when you press it in to meet the center crease, don't have it so that it's touching. Leave a little bit of a gap, and I'll show you what I mean. Leave a little bit of a gap, just a small, like the smallest amount of a gap. And I know it's going to be hard. It'll look better when I have it all taped down, but you can see I've had a little bit of a gap. And that's so that when we fold it again in half, you won't get any bulk or any bulging here in the center where this fold is here. It just helps the strap fold a little bit nicer. So once you have these long edges folded into the center and you'll press it with your iron, again, this is for quilting cotton, you'll then fold it again and press that with your iron. So I'm going to show you what we do if we're using vinyl or cork or faux leather like I'm using here, so the vinyl. So we're going to press those long edges in to meet the center. And I'm just putting double-sided tape all the way down the entire length of my strap. And I'm not going to put it right to the edge at that end, or at this other end. I'm going to peel it back a little bit. And the reason why is because we need to fold those short edges in so that we have no raw edges. So I'm going to, get that from sticking to me. Fold my long edges in to meet the center. Again, I'm leaving that little bit of a gap. So I'm just folding it in. Again, leaving that little bit of a gap so I'm not touching right to the center line. And I had to piece my strap together because I didn't have a long enough piece. So if you don't have a long enough piece, you can do the same thing. Just piece it together. And I do have a tutorial on my YouTube channel for how I do that, just in case you're new and you're not really sure how to do it. So now I'm pressing the other long edge in, and again, leaving a slight gap in the center there. Now when we get to the ends, what you're going to do is there's a measurement in the pattern for how far down we're going to fold this short edge. And then you're going to press it, or you can use double-sided tape. Then you'll fold these edges in again to the center, and then we'll fold it in half. So you'll fold that short edge down and then repress your long edges into the center. Now I fold mine, or I sew mine a little bit differently. So I'm going to do that now, and I do have a tutorial on my YouTube channel for how I do this. So I will link that below if you want to do yours this way. I'm not going to walk you through because that tutorial is there to help you. I'm just going to quickly do this. And then we'll finish constructing our strap. So press your edges, your short edges in to meet the center. Or not to meet the center, to meet that line, sorry. So once you have those short edges in, you just refold your strap back on the original fold that you made. And for some reason, mine doesn't want to lay nice and flat inside here. It's fighting me today. Go figure. There we go. So we'll repress it all along the edge, and then we'll add some double-sided tape to hold this together. Now you can just clip it if you want. You don't have to use double-sided tape. You could just use a bunch of clips all the way along the edge. I like using double-sided tape because it just prevents the strap from shifting on me. So some double-sided tape, and I'm going to place this all the way, oh, that's empty, all the way along the whole long edge. And I've got a clip up at the top, and that's just holding that in place for me. Sorry, that took a little bit longer than I wanted it to. So double-sided tape. Now, if you're using quilting cotton, again, just take this to your iron and give it a press to press it in half. I'm not going to remove the tape the whole way down just because it gets stuck to everything. So line up those folded edges, press it so the folded edges meet. So just like that, folded edges are all meeting. Folding it right in half. And what we're doing is we're concealing all the raw edges within the folds here, and then we're going to top stitch this strap. And then this end, just make sure your ends are pushed under. So keep them folded under where you folded them. This end is the end that's fighting me. It's like it doesn't want to be turned under. I need to poke out that corner a little bit more. There we go. All right, so then that's how your strap will look once you have it all pressed. And now we're going to top stitch around all the edges of the strap. So down the short, up across the short edge and back up to the other short edge, then across that short edge. Now, to prevent your strap from twisting, what you can do is start at one end, back stitch, go all the way down the one side, come down on this short edge and back stitch, then break your stitches and come back up to where you started and back stitch down that whole other edge again. So you're going in the same direction both times. And this will help prevent the twisting of the strap that you get. Sometimes straps twist on us. Now, if you're using quilting cotton, even if you get twisting, what I do is I go to my iron and I give it a really good press, and I find that takes care of all the twisting that's happened from stitching it. But with vinyls and faux leathers, you can't take it to your iron and press it. So this is how you prevent that twisting from happening. So I'm back at the short end, back stitch down there, then I'm going to come back up to this end, and I'm going to back stitch up here, and I'm just on top of my previous stitches that I made. And I'm just going to stitch down the entire length of the strap. Then back across that bottom edge, trim all your threads. And that is how your strap will look once you have it all stitched. So you'll have it both long edges. Now, if you want, you can go back and you can stitch 2 more lines of stitching towards the center of the strap if you want. That just adds a little bit more decoration to the strap. Sometimes I like to do that, but for this tutorial, I won't. But that's how it looks when you get it all top stitched. Now we need to add our hardware. And for this, we need to grab our slider and our swivel hooks. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to need to use a thicker slider. Oh, I just dropped a pair of scissors in the trash. So I'm going to see how it goes with this slider first. Ugh, keep throwing the wrong things in the garbage. So you'll need 2 swivel hooks and 1 slider if you're making the crossbody strap. If you're not making the crossbody strap, your strap is going to be much shorter and you won't need a slider, but you will still need these swivel hooks if you're making the strap this way, and if you're making it with the hardware as well, any of the hardware, you'll make it this way. So what we're going to do is take the slider, and mine's the one with the bar that moves in the center, so I just let it drop to the bottom. I slide my strap through, slider middle bar is still at the bottom, then I push the slider bar against the strap and bring the strap up over that center bar. So you can see it there, it's over that center bar. So it'll look like that. Then we need to either sew this, so you can sew this with a box and then an X in the middle, or you can add a rivet. I will go and add a rivet, but I'll do that off camera because I don't think you need to sit here and watch me add rivets. So now with my slider facing up, so I have it like this on my table, I'm going to find the other end of my strap, and with my swivel hook against my table, so like this, I'm going to slide my strap through the D-ring or the hardware ring on my slider or swivel hook. So now it looks like this. Then we go back over to our slider, and again, I'm going to let that middle bar fall to the center or fall to the bottom, slide the strap up, and then come back down over the middle bar. So it looks just like this. Pull that through, and then with your slider now against the table, so it's against the table, place your swivel hook again against the table, slide the strap through the hardware on the swivel hook, and you'll fold this as far as the instructions say in the pattern. You'll fold that up. Now again, you can sew an X with a box, sew a box with an X in it, or add your rivet or Chicago screw. I'm going to do that after because I know I'll need to go off to make some markings. So I'll do that after when I need to go off camera. But I'll add some rivets to this here, and then I'll add a rivet here, and then it'll be all complete. But that's how your strap will look. I'm just going to tighten that. This is how your strap will look once it's all done, obviously minus the clips. And if you're making a shoulder strap, you don't need to add the slider in the middle here. You'll just have a strap without the slider on it. So you can make the shoulder strap or the crossbody strap. Now, I like crossbody straps because you can tighten them and still wear it as a shoulder strap. It's just nice because if we're making these for, say, craft markets or gifts, we're never really sure what the person who's going to be getting the bag, unless you really, really know them. But we're never really sure how they like to wear their bag. So it's just nice to be able to say, well, it's a crossbody strap, but tighten it and you can wear it as a shoulder strap. I just like that as an option. Now, if you haven't already, please attach your interfacings with the instructions given in the pattern. Once you have that attached, we need to grab our two exterior panels. So the exterior front body, the main body front and back. So here are my two exterior panels. I'm going to place one right sides up. I'll start with the seafoam one. This one is right sides up. And then we're going to place the other one right sides down on top. And then we're going to clip them together. So right now, they're pretty sides touching. So clip it all the way along the sides. Just like that. So just on your sides here is where you're clipping. Now, once you have those clipped, we need to sew these sides together using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And if you've switched to a stitch length that you use for top stitching, don't forget to return it back to your stitch length for sewing your bag together. Back stitch at start and stop. Back on this side, and back at the top, back stitch again, and I'll back stitch at the bottom. Whenever you start or stop stitching, always back stitch. Trim all your threads so you get no peekaboo threads. Now, we need to finger press these seams open. You can finger press them open, or you can take your roller. If you're using a quilting cotton, you can take this to your iron and give it a press with your iron. Now, another thing you can do is you can use some double-sided tape on either side of the seam. That'll help keep it pressed open, which is what I might do just to really ensure that it stays pressed open. So I'll show you what I mean. Hang this back up. So double-sided tape. I may or may not use a lot of double-sided tape. All right. So double-sided tape, I'm going to place it on the seam. Just like that. And then just press it open, and the double-sided tape will help hold it in place, because we need to top stitch on either side of that seam in the next step. So I really want this to be nice and flat. So you can do the same thing, but if you're using a quilting cotton, again, you can take this to your iron and press it with your iron, and that'll press it really flat. If you're using a vinyl or faux leather, you can seam roll it with your seam roller, or use some double-sided tape, and that'll help hold it pressed open just like that. So you can see it's held. So I'll do that on the other side. It's not coming off. And one more side. Now we're going to top stitch those side seams all the way down. And remember, this is a tube, so you need to go very slow. So increase your stitch length to your top stitch length. And what I like to do is start with my bag so that it's at the seam, using the seam allowance. That's how far you're going to sew over from the seam, and I just start sewing with it like this. And I just go all the way down, and as I'm coming closer to where my hands are, I just move it, and you'll see it's curving up back here behind my presser foot. So I'm going to move it some more, and I'm flattening it here on the bed of my machine as well. And I'm always stopping with my needle down. So you see how it's getting higher in the back because it's going back behind my machine. Trim my threads. Then I'm going to go onto the other side. So now flip it around and start on the other side the same way. So keeping this flat on the bed of my machine. And then I just keep going all the way down. So there's one seam, so you'll see it. It's all top stitched. I'm trying to show you. There you go. So I've top stitched down both sides of the seam. I'm going to trim those threads right now, and then we're going to top stitch the other side. And we're going to do the exact same thing. Start at the top, back stitch, and then just stitch all the way down. It seems a bit odd to do it this way, the top stitching, but once you get the hang of it, it's really not as hard as it looks once you get the hang of it. It's just a little bit of getting used to doing that. The nice thing is it's a pretty big tube, so there's lots of space to maneuver the bag. Now we have both, so I'm just going to flip it so you can see it, how it looks. So can you see how that's top stitched on both sides of the seam? Beautifully top stitched on both sides. Now we need to take the completed exterior with it wrong sides out and have it so it's flat, and we need to shift this right seam to the left. Now there's a measurement given in the pattern for how far you're going to shift it to the left. So we're going to do that, but I need to go off camera in order to be able to do that. So I'm going to go off camera, make that mark, and you're shifting this right seam over. So you're going to measure from this right seam. So right now I had it like this, where the two seams were like that. So I'm going to bring it so the right seam comes over, and from the right seam to this edge is where you're measuring. So I'm going to go do that, and I'll come back and we will continue on. So I've moved that right seam over, that right side seam over by the measurement given in the pattern, and then I remarked my center seams here and the center of the top of the panel as well, both the bottom and the top on both sides. And that way there we have all our quarter markings made, all our center points. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and do that. Now we need to take our exterior bottom piece and we need to match it up with these center points. So first center point is going to be on the long edge of the bottom and on the long edge here of your bottom of your panel. Now, whatever side you want to be the bottom or the top, this doesn't matter at this point. It'll only matter when you have your connectors attached, but we're not attaching them yet. So pick which one you want to be the bottom. Again, it doesn't really make a difference. But on the bottom here, so over from your seam, you have a mark that was your center point. So you want to line that up with the bottom center point on the long edge of the bottom. So the bottom is going to go right sides together with the bottom edge of your exterior panel. And you're lining up those center points. So they're going to be pretty sides touching. So clip it together just like that. And then you're going to clip it together along the rest of the edge. Now, there's a measurement when we're sewing for where we need to stop sewing, and I've made the marks on my bottom panel here for where we're going to start and stop sewing. So you're going to start at that mark we made here from the corner of the bottom. So there's a mark here. I'm going to start there, backstitch, so all the way along, stopping when I get to this mark here. So that means I'm sewing with my bottom panel facing up right now. Normally I would have it against the bed of my machine, but I have it facing up. And you're going to sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Also, because we just top stitched, don't forget to return your stitch length back to the length you used for stitching your bag together. So back stitch at start and stop, and then sew along that whole long edge using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And if you fused your interfacing correct, you should not be sewing through it at all. And you're only sewing through one layer of the exterior right now. So make sure the other layer is kept out of the way. You don't want to sew through anything else. Stop when you get to that line that we made, or that mark we made on the bottom panel. Trim your threads, which I don't know where mine went. And it'll look like that. Right now it's attached. I just saw threads. There we go. Now we need to match this other long edge to the other side of the exterior panel. So center marks lined up, pin it in place, and then again we're going to start and stop sewing from that mark we have on the bottom panel. So you'll start there and you'll stop at that mark, and you'll back stitch at that mark as well. So start and stop stitching here. So here's that mark. I'm going to start there, go all the way across and stop at the mark here. And it's going to feel a little bit wonky right now because we have that other panel attached. So it's going to feel like it's pulling a bit. But you can make it work. Trim your threads because we don't want peekaboo threads, as I always say. So right now you have a bag that is looking like this, but your bottom corners here are not attached. So now we need to attach those. So you'll match, again, the center markings here with your center markings on your exterior panel. So bottom panel center marking with the bottom panel center center marking on your exterior. And I'm going to clip both sides right now. Now, for this side, you can sew with your base up and you can start sewing from where we stopped sewing earlier. You'll start sewing in that corner here where we stopped or started, wherever your stitching was, and you'll go all the way to where the other stitching ends in that corner. Now, the other thing I'm going to do just to help this corner lay a little bit flatter is I'm just going to make a snip just within the seam allowance to help open that up a bit for me. And that'll just make that a little bit easier for sewing this corner because I can get it nice and flat. So you see how it just opened up that corner a bit? I don't know if you can see that on the camera. It opened up that corner just a little bit for me. And that's what I want. I just want that corner. But again, I'm snipping it within the seam allowance. But I want that corner open so I can get a nice flat area to sew and a nice seam. So starting where I stopped previously, and I'm just going to sew straight across. And you'll see when we turn it out, we're going to have really nice corners because of the way this was constructed. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim down these corners just to reduce the bulk in the corners there. So I'm going to trim them on an angle. Careful not to clip your stitches. Just trimming down the seam allowance. Again, this will just help these corners push out nicely. And if your interfacing is like mine, where it's sort of starting to lift off, you can go ahead and refuse it in place. I'm going to leave it for now because when I give the bag its final press, I'll fuse it again through the lining of the bag to attach it. Now I'm going to turn it right sides out. I'll show you how it looks once I get it all pushed out. It's a good size bag too, I really like it. So push out all your corners, and cutting the bulk out of the corners will really help get nice corners for you. So see how it all looks nice and flat, and then you have a really nice sturdy bottom too because of the Decoville Heavy in there. But that is how it looks. Really beautiful, quick sew for a bag. I like how shiny it is too. So I'm going to put that to the side. Now, if you're using a material, that is a non-fraying material, a material that is fraying, so quilting cotton, you'll want to turn the seam allowance at the top under here, and the measurement is given in the pattern. So I'm actually going to do that, but I'm going to do that off camera. But before we do, I want to show you how to construct the lining, and then, because the lining I also have to press it down. So we're going to construct the lining, and then we will turn this down. So what you do is you take this and you fold the top edge down by the measurement given in the pattern. And what that does is it just gets rid of that raw edge. Now I know my material is a non-fraying material, but for this tutorial I want it to be as if you were using all quilting cotton. So that's why I'm going to turn that edge down. So I'm going to put this to the side because I know I need to go off camera in order to press my lining down as well. So I'll do that when I press my lining. So I'm just marking the centers of my bottom here because I realized I didn't do it on my quilting cotton one for my lining. And you're going to construct the lining the exact same way we constructed the exterior. So you're going to place them right sides together. Take your two lining pieces, place them right sides together. And if you're like me and used a directional print, this is important to make sure the print is facing the same direction. So right sides together, clip them in place. And remember, we have to then shift that seam over, just like we did with the lining, the exterior. So again, sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. So now we're going to press these seams open. So because it's quilting cotton, I'm going to take this to my iron, press it open. I'll also make the marks on my corners here for how far we're going to stop and start sewing. And I'll also mark the top edge here. If you want to read through the pattern a little bit, you can see how far the top edge we need to fold this down. So I'll make that mark on this one, and I'll also make the mark on the top edge of my exterior. And that's just for where we're going to fold this down, so that there's no raw edges showing later in the pattern. And the other thing I'm going to do when I go off camera is make the mark for where my magnetic snap is going to go from the top down. So I know that this here, let me make sure, is the top of my bag. So I'm going to mark a T on both sides so I know where it is. So there's a T, and that just tells me that this is the top. So from the top edge down is where you're going to place the magnetic snap. So I'm going to go do that all off camera, and I'll come back and we will continue with constructing our bag. So I've made all those marks that need to be made, including the mark from the top edge down on my lining, the top edge down on my exterior, the bottom marks for where we need to start and stop sewing, and also for where my snap is going to be placed. So we're going to now construct the interior. And again, all those markings are made for where the centers are. So I made the new center markings. I folded this so that it's over the measurement given in the pattern. So again, same thing we did with the exterior. Your lining is going to go, the lining bottom is going to go right sides together with the bottom edge of the lining front back. Line up your center marks, clip it in place. And then we're going to sew that starting and stopping at those marks we made. Just make sure that seam stays pressed open. And I didn't top stitch along the seams in the lining. I totally forgot, but also I normally don't top stitch down the seams in a lining just because it's in the lining. But I totally forgot to do that. But you can if you didn't forget, or if you don't have your base attached yet. And you'll just do it the exact same way we did it for the exterior. So now the exterior base is there. I'm going to sew the other side. And when it comes to sewing those short edges, I'll do the same thing. I'll make a little snip into the corner, and that'll help my corners open up nicely so I can be able to get a nice clean edge there. So line up your center marks. Snip just in the seam allowance. I don't know if you can hear that, but I have a panel hanging on my wall off my curtain, and I guess my heater is blowing it and it's making these creepy noises. So if you're hearing a creepy noises, that's what it is. It's the curtain, the heater blowing on that panel. All right, so I made those snips to help the corners open up. Now I'm going to stitch from the previous stitching all the way across. And that snip I made, again, is just within the seam allowance. I didn't go any further than the seam allowance. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to trim the corners down. Just to remove the bulk. I know we're not turning this right sides out, but it'll just help remove that bulk in those areas when it's put inside the bag. There it is. It's all attached all around the bottom, and I'm not too concerned about trimming threads this time on this panel on the exterior or on the wrong side here, because it's going to be inside the bag, so if I don't trim the threads, it's not too much of a concern. Now, we need to install our magnetic snap using that mark we made on the panels. So you can use your manufacturer's instructions to install your magnetic snap, but I'll show you for one half and then I'll go off camera and I will install the other half. So one half of the magnetic snap, so from the top edge down is where you're going to make that mark, and centered with that center mark you drew. Place your magnetic snap centered on that mark. Use your washer to make the prong marks. Grab all my little tools. Now we're going to cut the slits for the prongs. Now, if you're worried about pushing too far where your prongs are, you're worried about pushing your seam ripper too far, take your needle and insert it at the top of where that first mark is, where your first mark for your washer is. Go in. So there's the line. I went in and I come back out at that other line. And I'll show you on camera. So you can see where the marks are. And I went in through the top line and out through the other top line. And then what happens is when we're seam ripping, see how my needle stops my seam ripper from going any further? Sort of like a guard. It's acting like a guard, so you can't rip any further. Because there's been times where I'm pushing and I've ripped too far. Luckily, I was able to salvage what I was doing, but sometimes that has happened and I have to, go back, and I've had it where I've had to throw the material out. But luckily, the couple of times that it did happen, I was able to salvage it, and there was a couple times I couldn't. So I've just applied some fray stop to my slits. And either half of the magnetic snap you can install right now, because we're going to install the other half on the other side. And I'll go off camera to do that. So you don't need to sit and watch me install two halves of it. Then I have a piece of scrap interfacing here. And I'm just going to do the same thing. Mark the slits. Cut my slits. Place this over top of the magnetic snaps prongs. Then place the washer over top. And then what I like to do is add a little piece of tape over top of the prongs. And that just protects the bag over time from the prongs rubbing through and pushing through to the other side. So that's how you install it. If you've got a different magnetic snap, refer to your manufacturer's instructions, which you always should. This is just how I install them. So I'm going to go install the other side, and I'll come back and we will continue on. So I've installed that second half of the magnetic snap, and I also pressed my top edge down just so I don't have to go off camera to do that. But what I did was I just folded it down to the line that we made and pressed it in, or folded it down on that line we made, sorry, and pressed it in place. And then there's my magnetic snap. So I'm just going to put this to the side for a second because I wanted to show you how to construct your strap connectors. So you have a piece here. You're going to draw a line down the center. Then what you're going to do is fold both long edges in to meet the center. And you can use some double-sided tape here if you want to help hold it in place, or you can just press it with your iron if you're using quilting cotton. So you're going to press them in half, just like that, or press them in to meet the center. Then what you're going to do is top stitch down both long edges. Clip all your threads. And I know I'm using this to show you, but I'm going to actually put this to the side because one day I may need this as a connector for another bag, so I'll keep this so it's not wasted. So then you have your connector that looks like this. And what you're going to do is you're going to slide your hardware. So I'm just going to grab a piece of hardware here. So imagine that this is your D-ring. You're going to slide this so that it's over your D-ring, and your D-ring will be in the center. You can then base stitch the short edges together, and if you want, you can sew as close to the hardware as you can. So we'll imagine our hardware is still on there. Then you're going to take your bag and you're going to place this, so your hardware is still attached. You're going to place this so it is at the center sides. So line up the center edge on your connector with the side edge, just like this. So you'll find the center of your connector and you'll attach it there. Then you'll base that in place, and you'll do that for both sides. So you'll have your D-ring here and you'll baste it in place on both side edges of your bag. Then once we turn this seam down into the bag, this is going to point up like that, and that's what you want. You want it pointing up. So I'm just going to place these off to the side. So that's how you do the D-ring connector. Now, the other connectors are attached a little bit differently, so we need to wait to do that. Now, I'm going to use some double-sided tape to hold my top edge down where I'm folding it down. So I'm using double-sided tape for this because I can't press it with my iron. And again, I know I'm using a material that I could leave raw edged, but for this video, I want to treat it as if I'm using quilting cotton, so that if you're using all quilting cotton, you know what to do. And your connectors can also be made out of quilting cotton because as you just saw, there's no raw edges. They're all folded or sewn in the seams. I'm going to need to order some more double-sided tape. I'm almost out of it. Now we're going to press this top edge down to the mark, on the mark we made, so using the measurement we made. And press it all the way around. And it's going to feel a little bit wonky, especially when you're trying to do this from inside the bag. When I get to these seams here, I like to make sure that they stay lined up so the seam is continuous going inside the bag, if that makes sense. There we go. So I've pressed that top edge completely down inside the bag, just like that. So if you're using quilting cotton, that's how you'll do that. Now that we have that constructed, I'm just going to move on to where we're going to finish. We need to place the exterior and linings together. So with the exterior right sides out, you're going to place your lining inside. So you're doing a drop-in lining, and that's why those top edges are folded down. Place the lining inside. And you can line up your center marks. And it might be a little bit hard to see right now because we've got them all folded down. But try to get everything all lined up. You can see it now. There we go. So line up all your center marks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the camera and I'm going to make those center marks on the lining sides so I can see them, and on the exterior so I can see them, so we can line up all those marks. So I'll be right back. All right, so I was able to make those marks. I just moved them so that they were on the panels where I could see it now. So what I'm also going to do is, besides placing this into the lining of the bag or the exterior of the bag, I'm also going to use some double-sided tape around the top, and that's just going to help hold everything in place while I sew. So double-sided tape all around the top edge. And again, this is just to hold everything while I sew so it stays nice together, nicely together. Nothing will shift on me, because sometimes I find clips just don't hold it enough. And I'm not going all the way to the top edge with the double-sided tape. I'm coming down the edge a bit, and I'll show you what I mean. So you can see here how I didn't go all the way up with the double-sided tape. It might be easier to see it on that. There you go. I didn't go all the way to the top with the double-sided tape. Before I do that, I'm just going to make sure everything lines up, which it does. Okay, so now remove the paper backing. I'm going to stand to do this. So I'm just going to remove the paper backing. And if you don't have double-sided tape, you can definitely just use clips. This is just a personal preference. So line up those top edges and your center marks, all your markings. Line them all up. And once you get all your quarter markings all lined up, everything else should line up nicely for you. You can see how it's actually pulling it so that it wants to go where it needs to. Sticking to my nails more than it is anything else at this moment. So then I'm just going to make sure that it's all lined up at the top edge here. Make sure there's no puckers. And you can see when I just pull it like that, it automatically goes where it needs to. You may have to adjust a little like I just did there. And see, it just went where it needed to. And I'm just pushing down the corners there of the bag, but that's how it looks right now. So now we're going to top stitch that entire top edge. Now remember, if you have D-ring connectors, they're going to be sticking out the sides like this. Don't fold them down over the edge. Leave them sticking up off the top like that and stitch all the way around. Now I'm going to add some clips too, just to make sure that it stays in place. All about the extra security here. So just adding a couple of clips around the top just to help hold everything in place. That double-sided tape will hold it in place, but this is just that extra bit of security. Now we're going to top stitch around the entire length of the bag. And I'm going to start on what will be the side. So switch to a top stitch length. So all the way around. And I don't have a free arm on my machine, but the bag is big enough that it can fit around my machine so I can stitch it. But if you are concerned about that, what you can do is turn it so your exterior is going to be inside and you're stitching with your lining on top of the bed of your machine. So that's how it's looking so far. It's really pretty. I really like it. And I like the size too. It's a nice size, good for, you know, a work bag or anything like that. Now, if you're using the connectors that are the specialty hardware, what you're going to do is lay your bag down so it is on a flat surface and clip it along the top because you want to get this nice and flat. And then you can clip it down along the sides. And what I would do is reach in and make sure your lining is also nice and flat in there. So get it all clipped, and I'm actually going to do this if you're using, I'm going to leave it clipped because if you're going to do what I'm doing, which is use grommets, you need to have this clipped too. So you want everything clipped together at the top, nice and flat, just like this. Now in the pattern, if you're using that specialty hardware, there's a mark that you need to make that is in from the side edges here. So you come in from the side edges and down. And once you have that lines marked, you're going to stitch that area to prevent this from shifting on you. Then you'll cut it out, so you'll have like a rectangle here on each corner and you'll have stitched it. Then you're going to cut inside that box through all the layers. So you're going through both the exteriors and both the linings. Then you're going to take that double D connector and you're going to put it into the cutout area, and you're going to secure it in place with the screws. You can also use some glue if you want, and that's just for extra security. Now I'm using the grommets. So again, same thing. I have my bag laid flat on my table. I've got it clipped at the top and the sides. I need to make a mark from the side edge in and from the top down. And once I have that mark made, I will then take my grommet and place it centered over those marks. And then I'll draw the center circle of the grommet, and then I will cut that out. I will sew around that circle, and then I will cut it out, and then I will put the grommets in and I will install them. So I'm going to go off camera to install my grommets. Depending on the grommets that you're using, you want to follow the manufacturer's instructions. So if you're using screw together grommets or the ones that you press together, follow the manufacturer's instructions. But again, you make a mark over from the center and down from the side, and down from the top. And where that mark is, so say this is the mark, that's going to be the center of your grommet. You'll place your grommet over that mark, draw the circle out for where the center is of the grommet, and then you'll sew around that circle and then punch it out. So I'm going to go off camera to cut where my grommets are going to be and install them, and then I'll come back and we will attach it to our bag and we'll be all done. So before I go and cut everything out and sew it, I just wanted to show you what it looks like when I've drawn my grommet holes. So here's my grommet, and mine are force fit grommets. So I made that mark. You can see that dot here, right here in the center of this circle that I made. So I made the dot, I lined up the center of my grommet with that dot, just like that, and then I traced inside the circle of my grommet. So just inside the circle, I traced inside it so that I got that marking there. And then what I'm going to do is stitch around this, and then I'll come back and everything will all be installed. So I've attached those grommets, and if you've used the other hardware, you have your hardware attached, or maybe you have your connectors coming up off the top edge of the bag, but that's how it'll look. Now all we need to do is add our strap, and I did go back and attach my rivets, so I have my rivets attached. Now the nice thing about this with the grommets, or even that hardware on the side, or even the top with your D-rings there sticking up the top, is you can use your swivel hook to attach it directly to your grommet, just like that, if you don't have those gate rings. But I have the gate rings, so I'm just going to attach them to the top, and you can also do this to the hardware on the side. So attach it to the top, then attach your swivel hook, and it does make the bag kind of heavy, but you just attach it like that, and you have your gate rings and your shoulder strap and everything attached, or your crossbody strap. Now, as I was mentioning before, this is a crossbody strap, but when it's tightened, as tight as it can go, it becomes a nice shoulder strap. And then you can adjust it and wear it as a crossbody bag. It's just nice to have that extra option for how to wear the bag. But again, if you don't have those gate rings, you can just attach your swivel hooks directly to your grommets here, and you still have a beautiful bag. So your Brevity is all done. It's now ready to take it out and show it off to the world. But before you do, don't forget to take lots of photos and share it on social media. And also use the hashtags that are given in the pattern so we can all find your beautiful bags. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and maybe picked up a few tips and tricks along the way. Thank you for sewing with me. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye and happy sewing.